The stars flickered dimly overhead, their light swallowed by the cold void of space. Commander Kavar of the Varlathi Dominion stood on the observation platform of his dreadnought, the Tyrannus. Before him, the human fleet hung in space, a ragtag assembly of vessels, ranging from sleek destroyers to clunky refitted cargo ships. Primitive, he thought, his mandibles clicking in disdain. The humans were a young species, new to the galactic stage. Their ships lacked the elegant lines and advanced energy shielding of Varlathi vessels. Their technology was barely a few centuries beyond their industrial age, and yet, as he gazed out at the fleet, a sense of unease gnawed at his insides. "Status report," Kavar growled. His second-in-command, a wiry officer named Tharketh, saluted sharply. "The humans have not moved, Commander. Their ships remain in low-power mode, as if conserving energy. Our scanners detect no unusual activity." Kavar's antennae twitched. "They're waiting for something." Tharketh hesitated. "Permission to speak freely, Commander." "Granted." "There is a pattern to their behavior. It defies logic. Most species, when faced with a superior force, retreat or surrender. The humans do neither. They stand their ground, even when defeat is certain." Kavar nodded grimly. He had seen the reports, whole armadas shattered, planetary garrisons overwhelmed by human troops despite overwhelming odds. The humans were a contradiction, primitive yet adaptable, reckless yet calculating. "What drives them?" Kavar muttered. "Why do they fight so fiercely?" The answer eluded him, and it was that uncertainty that unsettled him the most. Hours later, the human fleet began to move. Kavar's eyes widened as he watched their chaotic advance. Unlike the precise formations of the Varlathi, the human ships surged forward in what appeared to be a disorganized frenzy. Yet, despite the apparent disorder, they moved with purpose. "Shields up," Kavar commanded. "Prepare all weapons. Target their lead vessels." The battle erupted in a blaze of energy. Varlathi plasma cannons unleashed torrents of green fire, cutting through the void. Human ships wove through the onslaught with alarming agility, their return fire precise and devastating. "Report!" Kavar barked as alarms blared throughout the dreadnought. "They're breaching our front line!" Tharketh shouted. "Several ships have been destroyed, but, Commander, they keep advancing. Their losses don't seem to slow them." Kavar felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. Most species would falter after losing a few capital ships. The humans, however, seemed to grow more ferocious with every loss. On the surface of Tau Ceti Prime, General Alara Hayes wiped sweat from her brow as she surveyed her troops. "Status?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Her aide, Lieutenant Vargas, gestured to a holomap. "The Varlathi are entrenched along the ridge, but their lines are stretched thin. If we hit them here—" He pointed to a narrow gap in their defenses. "We can break through and flank their command center." Hayes nodded. "And the casualties?" Vargas hesitated. "Heavy, ma'am. We've lost over a third of our forces." The general's jaw tightened. "We can't stop now. If we give them time to regroup, we lose this planet, and the war. Ready the troops." As Vargas relayed her orders, Hayes turned to the battlefield. Smoke rose from the ruins of the colony, mingling with the acrid smell of burning metal and flesh. Her soldiers moved through the chaos with grim determination, patching up wounded comrades and reinforcing makeshift barricades. It wasn't the first time humanity had faced annihilation. Earth itself had nearly fallen during the first Varlathi incursion, but humanity had survived, clawing its way back from the brink. That resilience had become their greatest weapon. "Why do we keep fighting?" someone had asked her once. "Because we must," she had replied. In orbit, Kavar watched in disbelief as the human fleet broke through his defensive perimeter. Their ships moved with reckless abandon, colliding with his own vessels in desperate boarding actions. His warriors were unprepared for the sheer brutality of hand-to-hand combat with human soldiers. "Commander!" Tharketh's voice was panicked. "The humans have breached our hangar bay. They're singing." Kavar stared at him. "Singing?" "Yes, Commander. They chant as they fight. Our translators can't decipher it, but it's Unnerving. Kavar turned back to the view screen. For the first time in his long career, he felt true fear. On the battlefield below, Hayes led the final charge. Her soldiers surged forward, their voices rising in unison as they shouted their battle cry. For Earth! For humanity! The Varlathi defenders faltered, their disciplined ranks crumbling under the relentless human assault. Hayes could see the fear in their eyes. The Varlathi were strong, but they lacked the fire that drove her people. As her troops overwhelmed the enemy command center, Hayes stood amidst the chaos, her rifle in hand. Around her, the battlefield was littered with the dead and dying, human and Varlathi alike. Yet, despite the carnage, her soldiers stood tall, their faces grim but resolute. Later, as the dust settled, Kavar found himself a prisoner aboard a human ship. "Why?" he asked, staring at the human officer who interrogated him. "Why do you fight like this? Why do you throw yourselves into battle with such reckless abandon?" The officer, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward. "You don't understand, do you? It's not about victory, it's about survival, about protecting what we love." Kavar's mandibles twitched. "And that is what makes you so dangerous." The human smiled, his eyes glinting with a fire Kavar had never seen in another species. "Now you're starting to get it." For the first time, Kavar truly understood the most terrifying thing about human armies. It wasn't their weapons or their numbers. It was their indomitable spirit, their refusal to yield, their ability to turn tragedy into strength, and their unshakable belief in a future worth fighting for. And that, he realized, was something no amount of technology could ever defeat.